our mission as a battalion was we were split in the provincial reconstruction teams. But my company was a maneuver company, and we were split into an infantry platoon, which I was in, a scout platoon, mortar platoon, snipers, and I believe that was it.
Mhm.
And then we were on the outpost with Afghan army soldiers. But going in the war, I was doing what I signed up to do, what I had initially wanted to do. It was your typical 18-year-old punk soldier who thinks he knows it all. We're going to go in there, we're going to kick some ass. Even though we've been there for, well, at that point, we had been there for 7 years as an army. We had been in Afghanistan about 7 years. And, I was so naive. I didn't think like, oh, like our unit's going to be the one to end this or something. I was just ready to fight, and I thought we would end it through a violent means, but obviously it didn't work out that way.
And so you're not thinking in terms of, we're going to help Afghanistan become a somewhat well-functioning democracy and things like that.
I never believed that until I actually got there.
And
Um,
did your experience lead you to think that was possible?
in the beginning, yeah. I thought, these people have a chance. They want our help. They want to build their country up and come out of the Stone Age and whatnot because, it was very primitive over there. And yeah, at first I thought that, but then after a couple of firefights and the locals doing different things, I was like, they don't want our help. They just want us gone. Like, so
When you
that
say
was
the when you say the locals doing various things, that is effectively helping
so
the Taliban.
yeah, essentially helping the Taliban, aiding them. There were times we were attacked by the Taliban and they ended up killing civilians. And the civilians thought we were the ones that did it. So it was this whole thing of like animosity between us that they thought we killed their daughter, and here was a Taliban. It was a whole thing, and I was like, why would you not believe us? We're here to help you. But again, I was so young, and I didn't really think that much into it at first.
You've referred to the desire to help the girls of Afghanistan, and that was a major theme. When we get reports, well, we know progress is being made because, so many more girls are going to school.
Right.
Another story that wasn't kept secret because people knew about it. And I'm asking you if at the time if you were aware of it, because I'm not sure that this is happening everywhere in Afghanistan. So there's this interest in girls, but at the same time, there is something, at least in part of the culture of Afghanistan, where boys, um, experience significant abuse at the hands of older men. Um, and some vets who, witnessed this or knew it was going on just say that they were told,
That's their
just
culture.
leave it alone.
Yeah.
Um, were you aware that this was going on when you were in Afghanistan?
Yeah, I never saw it firsthand, but I was definitely aware. Um, it's just a different culture. And that's what we were told to do is just look the other way. That's the way they do things. And we knew deep down, though, it was wrong. Like nobody should be subjected to that. There's nothing you could do.
One of the things I'm just interested in any response you have to this, because as you say, what the soldiers and the Marines are told is don't do anything because that's their culture. And
Right.
so the idea is we don't want to mess with their culture. But at the same time, though, we're saying, but the girls are going to go to school, which of
Right. We
course
are.
is messing with the culture. So I'm wondering
Exactly.
why were we willing to mess with the culture when it came to the girls, but we're not willing to mess with the culture when it came to the boys? I don't know if you've ever even thought about that, but
No,
you have ever.
never. That's a unique perspective. Very good one. Um, I would have to say it probably had a lot to do with fighting, the Taliban recruiting. keep the men happy, empower the women to want to help take over Afghanistan. Kind of like a if
Mhm.
the men are happy doing what the men want to do, then we'll just let them keep doing it, and then so then that way they wouldn't turn on us. But I don't know, that's kind of far-fetched, but
No, actually, that makes some sense. Not that it makes it okay.
right,
You know, we it's not in our interest for the men, especially since they're the fighters of Afghanistan, to have another reason to be pissed at us. And if we take away their little play toys,
right.
and which is just,
It's
I
sick.
mean, even that we're having, even that we're discussing that kind of thing just points to kind of just the hard realities of the world sometimes. So you say that when you were arriving in Afghanistan, your state of mind is, I think, the state of mind of most teenagers and guys in their early 20s. You're not thinking geopolitics
Right.
and that, it's testosterone, it's about proving yourself as a soldier and having that experience. Um, let's put you on the flight out. Now I know in your case it's a little bit different because you're flown out for medical reason, and we'll talk about that. But let's put you on the flight out, and I don't know where your mind went on that flight, but suppose your mind lands on this question. So what was that all about? What was the meaning of that? What was the significance of that time in Afghanistan? What do you think you would have said to yourself at that time?
On the flight home.
Yeah.
Um, I I was ready to go back. I didn't want to leave to begin with. I was pissed about that at first, and then it felt kind of liberating to get on that plane. I was on a stretcher on my back, morphined up the whole ride,
No.
but so I was in and out of sleep the majority of it. But
Yeah.
the times I was awake, yeah, I just remember thinking like, how do I get in the opposite direction? How do I turn this plane around? But
Hmm.
I was happy to see, going home. I knew my mother would be waiting for me. So that was like, I got to get home to my mom. But in the same time, I can't leave my brothers back there without me.
So I think you may have just answered this question because one of the things that's interesting in what you write, and it's a paradox that is pretty common among combat vets, is on the one hand, I hate this place,
Mhm.
and to some degree, I hate these people, not my fellow soldiers, but the
Yeah.
folks out in the country. And I can tell that this place has done a lot to me,
Mhm.
in some ways good, in some ways bad, but I really hate this place. And at the same time, when now you're in a position where you're leaving, you're saying, I don't want to leave.
Right.
How do you make sense of that? I mean, it's maybe not possible to completely make sense of that, especially to someone who hasn't experienced it, but to the extent possible, how do you make sense of that?
Um, at the time, it didn't make sense. I was just pissed off and angry
Mm.
all the time at everything. I was so high strung. Waiting for anybody to turn a corner to shoot at me or an IED to go off. I was just, I couldn't make sense of it at the time. I just knew a piece of me belonged somewhere else in the world. Even when my brothers came home, we all talked about it. We're like, we got to get back there. We got to get back there with this group of people specifically.
So a lot of it has to do with just that sense of camaraderie that you
Yeah,
have with the fellow soldiers,
yeah,
which is more intense than anything you're ever going to experience in any other context, except maybe with police officers or firefighters or something like that.
right.
Let me ask you a question that I've often wondered about, but I've never asked another vet. And I won't take up your time with my story. But there's a place in a different country that I went to a few times. And if you read ancient descriptions of hell, in ancient literature, what hell is like, this place just fit the bill. Just an absolutely awful, horrible place. And you look around and say, this is an absolutely horrible place. And then I would leave there, and not long after, I would think, and I really want to go back. And I'd say, why?
Yeah,
Why do you want to go back to such a hellish place? And the answer I had is because in some way I can't really describe, it's the most real place I've ever been to.
yeah.
Does that make any sense to you?
It makes absolute sense because it was the best worst experience of my life because I had the most control over myself, even though I was in the military and giving orders. Like when it came down to it, if anybody got in my way, I just handled my business. It was pretty simple and straightforward. Um, and it set, like you said, it set things in perspective for me. Like life and death became a huge theme. Being away, just being away in general from your family, not having access regularly to your money. First world, we call them first world problems.
Right.
Running water, stuff like that. I would go 2 weeks without a shower. So,
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, you think I can't, why would you want to live that way? Why would you want to be in danger? All this stuff, but in the same breath, it's like because it was real, because people had real problems, we were having real solutions, you know, it was just overall, it was an eye-opening experience.
And everything matters, right?
Right.
Everything matters. Um, you said you used the phrase that just a minute ago, handle my business. If something came up, I would handle my business. What did you mean by that?
Right. Oh, well, like something even as like we're driving in a convoy down the road and a car would get in front of us, the convoy. And, my platoon sergeant would be like, yell at them, tell them to move. And if they wouldn't move, then it's like, point your weapon at them, get them to move, continue to get, we had an escalation of force. So it was like, you know, here's the objective. There's somebody in front of our convoy trying to block it. I need to get them off the road or to the side. So I'm just going to handle my business and stick a gun in their face. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the authority there. I say what goes, even though it's your country. And that was another paradox that was hard to handle. And then especially with coming home, because then it's like I can't drive down the middle of the road. I can't pull out a gun on somebody. I can't do this. And it felt like you had no power again.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, for lack of a better word, the intoxication of power, right? I mean, a
Right.
18, 19-year-old kid with a weapon who has the power to
Yeah.
command other people. Um, how would you describe the evolution? Early on, you think, well, maybe this can work. Maybe we can help this country, this weird country that in some ways seems prehistoric, and but yet then they've got all these modern weapons. So it's like, it's like
Right.
this weird world. But maybe they can become some kind of, somewhat functioning democracy to a place where you say you're looking at them and you say they hate us. Um, and kind of okay, well, now I'm putting words in your mouth, and so if I'm wrong, let me know, but kind of like, well, okay, well, I guess I don't really care what they think. We're just going to do what we're going to do and take out as many of the enemy. Describe that evolution. Were there some key moments along the way that, led to that transition from I'm somewhat hopeful for these folks to I couldn't care less about these folks?
So, while when I first arrived in Afghanistan, I I believed, these people have a chance. They want democracy. They want what we have to offer. Um, I think it was the month of April. We were attacked almost every day, either on the outpost or outside of the wire. And they called it the fighting season because springtime, the mountains unfroze and the
Yeah,
snow went away. So,
right.
Um, what? The more intense the combat became, the more I was like, okay, they really don't want us here. They really do hate us, you know. And there was one firefight, and we eliminated the one band there. by the IED site. The next day they're kind of doing a funeral procession down the road in front of the outpost, and I was like, "What the hell?" Like we took that guy out last night, and and the interpreter told me he's like, "That's their family, that's their tribesmen, that's their home, it's the right thing to do." And that's when I was like, okay, so they definitely don't want us here. And that's when I was like, screw them. I'm done with this place. I'm done with these people. They can all die for all I care. It was the mindset of just drop a bomb, wipe it off the face of the earth. There's nothing here. We'll just that's it. I was in a fight, my first firefight. I heard an RPG go by. Um, it didn't detonate, but I knew what it was after, you know, I came to my senses. And then we took some pop shots, but that I never fired a shot. And that was whatever. But then there were firefights where I heard bullets whipping by my head, zinging by my head, and then like an RPG almost taking me out and detonating that time. Um, it's just but there was a lot of boredom, a lot, and we would get creative and we'd come up with games. We would play with rat traps and mice traps. We would set them and put them in each other's boots or under their pillows or wherever. Um, and I remember one time I took a 2-pack of Oreos, pulled out the Oreos, put in a mouse trap perfectly, sealed it back up, put it with the snacks, and of all people, my squad leader came out and grabbed it. And he had me there, and I was like, oh crap. But he found it funny. We were always joking, but I think we all reached a point where the jokes were being a little too much, and we needed to take things a little more serious because we were getting attacked one time, and I remember running by the Humvees and Mike Shutt, my good friend, Um, he said, Harmon, not everything's a joke as we're running to our positions and we're getting shot at. And I'm just laughing at it. But, he didn't know that was my way of dealing with stress is through comedy,
Right.
finding a way to just make light of a situation. But he didn't know that. So he just took it as like I wasn't being serious, even though I took my job very serious.
Yeah. As you think about these firefights you've described, you can hear the bullets go by, you have an RPG go by, one explodes, one doesn't. Um, and then also you're seeing things out there. And kind of this idea of the tape that you can play in your mind as that tape is playing of whichever firefight, or maybe sometimes the firefights kind of merge and you don't remember what goes with what. Um, what are you seeing? What do you see out there as these tapes play in your mind of these firefights?
Um, it depends on what I'm thinking about. Um, but the harder ones, it's like I could hear a helicopter. I live right next to a hospital. There's a helipad there. I hear the helicopter go over 3, 4 times a day, and sometimes I'm like, here it comes. I'm going back to Afghanistan to when we would get resupplied, or I'd have to jump on the chopper, or I got medevaced out, like just different scenarios. Um, and then the biggest thing is like a smell or maybe even like a sound. Like I had a firework go off by my head and it zipped past and it sounded like a bullet. And then it popped and hit the side of my house. But so that took me back immediately, right back to a firefight. And what I'm seeing is when I go back there, I'm back there. And most of our firefights were at night during a full moon. And I still have trouble with that. I came to the conclusion during full moons, I'm up through the night more often than if it's a new moon or whatnot, because they would attack during full moons because they didn't have night vision, so they'd come down off the mountain, and get in their positions by the lay of the moon. Um, yeah, I go back there when go outside and I look at the moon at night. I tend to go back there. I'm like, okay, we're not getting attacked tonight. We are getting attacked tonight. It's like I would go back to those moments of the firefights because again, it was the best worst time of my life.
Yeah, I was well, and I think you just kind of answered the question that was developing in my mind. When you go back there, is there sometimes, not all the time, but is there sometimes a feeling of missing it and thinking, man, I wish I could be back there right now.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes it's not even I want to be in a firefight again. It's I just want to go back. I felt safe. As odd as that sounds, like I could die at any given moment, but I felt safe. Sleeping on the ground, up against an MRAP, tire with in my full kit and everything. I felt more safe there and got the best sleep of my life there than I do at home in my own house, in my own bed. Um, yeah, it's
Do you
weird.
do you identify with combat vets who say that going into a fight, maybe they were afraid of being wounded or killed, but they were more afraid of letting down their fellow soldiers?
Yeah, definitely. Um, you kind of write yourself off at a point. You're like, okay, I'm already dead. I had a bullet that I took, a 7.62, an AK-47 round, and I wrote my name on it. And somebody asked me what I was doing, and I said, well, if there's a bullet out there with my name on it, I have it. And I carried it with me. And it's like you write yourself off, but the biggest thing is if you're not doing your job and you freeze up or whatever the case may be, that's one part of the machine that's down, and the machine can't function properly if it's not all working in conjunction with each other. So, yeah, I would agree with that.
So you wrote, and I think you say something like this a few times. You say that I had to prove myself worthy.
Yeah.
I think you meant worthy of the respect of my fellow soldiers. So how would you do that in your job? What things did you need to do to feel that you had proved yourself worthy?
Um, One of the biggest things was I was the radio operator. So I was in charge of filling all the radios with crypto. Like I carried around a crypto box, and I would do things with that, with the radios, but it was up to me if we had communication or not. It wasn't up to anyone else. It was solely my responsibility on the outpost. Okay, do the trucks have comms? Do the squad leaders have comms with the team leaders who have comms with the command post? Does everybody have comms? Do we have internet? Do we have a phone? Do we have a secret phone? The secure line. Um, that was a lot to being 20 years old on the side of a mountain and there's 30, 40 other people there and they're relying on you to be able to talk to the outside world back to headquarters to call in air support or launch mortars or whatever the case may be. Like none of that can happen if they can't talk and that's all on me. So yeah, I felt I didn't want to let anybody down.
Did you do any operations with Afghan soldiers?
Yeah, all the time.
What was your take on them?
Um, they were shady. I say that because this is prior to like the insider attacks.
Mm.
Um, there wasn't much of that going around. That was like later in like 2010, 2012, I believe. They started doing that. So I believe they wanted to fight for their country, but there were times they would not shoot back or they would kind of cower. There was a lot of, hard chargers, I call them. A lot of like firm, I believe in my country, I want to fight, I want to do this. Like it was, our interpreter was so much that way that after we had a bunch of time with him and vetted him, like we would end up, we weren't supposed to, but we gave him an AK to carry, you know, and but like it's that trust you have to gain. So you during firefights, you would see which ones. But I called them bullet magnets because for a time, like if we went on a mission with Afghan soldiers, the Afghan soldiers were getting it first. And I believe that because they were, they weren't as strong of a fighting force. So they knew if they took out the weak ones first, they could probably get the rest of us. We'll be too busy occupied trying to help them or
Get the
whatever the case may
medevac.
be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I saw a lot of them get shot up, banged up, and more than our own guys. So
And you noticed that pattern that the Taliban would hit the ANA guys first.
yeah,
Wow.
them and there was an A&P station down the road from us, and the Taliban they sat in a meeting like I don't know the width of my office, you know, and they began shooting at each other because they had disagreements. So they wanted the Taliban wanted the A&P to help them, and the A&P was like, "We're not doing this." And we're helping the Americans. And they got in a big firefight, and there was just blood everywhere. And people ran out of their sandals, it was chaos. But so
Wow.
that proved to us like they want to stand up for their country. They want to fight for it. They just need the resources, they need the help. He was killed by an IED. It was pretty early on in the deployment too, like a month or a couple months into it, I believe. And that was kind of the first, I wouldn't say the first reality check of being there, but it was definitely a gut-wrenching moment. And then we had the memorial like a day or two later, where with the boots and the rifle and the dog tags and the helmet. And they did the final roll call. And, at the end, they're like, Holland, Holland, Specialist Derek Holland. And then they play taps. And then it's just bone chilling, just very to the core. Like, this is real.
To what extent were IEDs a problem where you were?
Oh, they were intense. I remember calling my grandmother. Well, we had these systems that would pick up like every time they were jammers, but they were also like readers, like, okay, you hit an IED here, it didn't go off. You rolled over an IED here, it you jammed it, or whatever the case may be. And I think it was one day we had something ridiculous. Like I want to say in an hour's time we rolled over like 15 or something. It was something ridiculous like that. And I called home to my grandmother and we were talking and she was like, "Oh, I was watching the news and I saw they have IEDs over there. Did you encounter any?" And at this point, like I had seen them go off, I had seen them kill people, I had seen them do all sorts of stuff. I had rolled over them. And I lied to her. I said, "No, I haven't seen any." And she said, "Oh, they're a new weapon, I guess." And, because they were becoming more prominent around that time. Like, but yeah, we had a lot of problems with them.
And interested in your response to this, and this is easy to understand. Combat vets say, in a firefight, you can shoot back. So, there's a feeling that there's something you can do. Problem
Yeah,
with these IEDs is you just get hit. And I mean, unless that triggers a firefight, you,
right,
a lot of times it's just an IED, you get blown up and there's no one to shoot at, there's no one to respond to.
right,
Um, is that the experience you had? And then, I mean, if so, what is the psychological toll of that, of just going out feeling like we're going to get hit and
right.
there's nothing we can do? I mean, there's no one to respond to.
Um, one time I was put on the point truck. I was the lead gunner. and we were going looking for an IED. They called in, said locals found an IED right here. This is where it's at. Go find it. And I was on the lead truck and I had binoculars and we were going real slow. And I was like thinking to myself, I was like, this could be bad for me, for everybody. Like again, it was a lot of pressure. It was like we were all looking, but I felt very responsible because I'm up higher. I have a better line of sight. And we ended up finding it. I didn't find it. One of the other members found it, but yeah, it's just the toll it takes on you. It's like, okay, it's gonna happen. Like, I'm gonna blow up. It's hard to find these things half the time. Like, it could be a piece of trash, it could be behind a rock. And then the worst part was, I was always worried I was gonna get blown off the side of the mountain because, the switchbacks. There's
Right.
one side of the mountain and the other side's the drop off. And I always thought to myself, they're gonna hide one in the side there of the mountain, and it's gonna blow me right off of this thing. Fortunately, that never happened, but we did find a lot of IEDs, and it took like a real toll because, like you said, you can't shoot back. It's just it happens, and you deal with it, and then possibly you get ambushed, and that did happen to us a couple of times.
That the ID goes off and then that's followed by firefight.
An ambush, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and then, if an ID can be just putting aside the trash and I know in Iraq they would put IDs inside dead dogs and things like that. I
yeah,
don't know if they did that in Afghanistan too. But you put all that stuff aside, an ID can be behind every rock.
right.
That means basically means
The whole country,
just yeah, the whole country. There's an ID pretty much every foot.
yeah.
Um, and the psychological toll that takes. And then also isn't part of it, you know about the IDs, and then it must be that you drive through or by these villages, and it's impossible that the villagers didn't know that these IDs are
Oh,
being.
they know. There was one firefight where the villagers left. The Taliban came in. And so we again on a full moon night, we got attacked from the village directly across from the outpost. And we were worried at first that there were civilians there because we didn't see anybody leave or anything. We thought they were all just hiding amongst the civilian crowd. But we ended up getting in a pretty good firefight, and the next morning, about 5, 6 in the morning, you see all the women and children from the village walking back in. And that was kind of one of those things like, okay, did they know because they're on their side, or did the Taliban come in and say, hey, get the hell out of here, or stuff's about to go down? It's kind of like you don't know what the scenario was that took place over there prior to the
Right,
firefight.
right. And is this a village, or do you have other villages where you have, similar kind of things, where
Yeah.
you've also, you done, like medical missions and dental
Mhm.
missions and giving the kids school supplies. So
Yeah.
you're trying to win the hearts and minds, and then next week it seems like, you know, they're working with the Taliban.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. I firmly believe some of the resources like the rice and whatever else we would give the locals, I firmly believe they would give it to the Taliban just to aid them.
Now, you left Afghanistan for a medical reason. What happened?
So I'd been hit by a rock in my left jaw, softball size. It was thrown by somebody. I don't really want to get into who threw it, but so it hit me. My jaw, I saw stars at first. I didn't black out that I remember. Um, I just remember I had blood coming out of the corner of my mouth, and they were like, "We got to get you down to the medical, medical station." So I go down there. They take me down, and they set me on a stretcher, like I'm sitting there, and the battalion surgeon's there, and he comes in, he looks at me. he pops my jaw up, and like I felt it go up, and then takes a step back, and it just goes and kind of falls down.
Wow.
Um, and he's like, "Yeah, we gotta get you out of here." And he hit me with morphine, and he wrapped me up like a Revolutionary War soldier just to kind of hold it up there.
Right.
And yeah, they called in the medevac. By the time the medevac got there, I was out of my mind, stoned. You know, the
Morphine.
morphine. Yeah. And I got on the helicopter. There was a Afghan soldier in a I thought it was a body bag. I don't know what else it could have been, but it was up to his neck and he had gauze on each one of his eyes. He was really shot up, you know. And for 45 minutes we rode to Jalal or Bagram and I just watched this guy in front of me the whole time as I'm doped up on morphine. And the flight medics would check with me, "Are you good?" And I'm like, I just give him a thumbs up. And then like they would check on this guy, check his pulse, check his breathing, just his vitals. And they would look at each other and like shake their head no. I took it as they were saying, no, he's not dead. Or like, that's how I took it. But, it could have been a totally different thing. Because again, I was completely out of my mind.
It could have
So,
been he's gone.
yeah, it could have been anything.
So the war in Afghanistan is it's your partner for the duration, huh?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. I'm not giving up. It goes back to that whole, a, a piece of my heart is somewhere else in the world. I left a lot of me there. I grew up there, you know. Um, that's where I went from being a boy to a man. That's where I learned that my father loved me. You know, that's where I learned that I'll have lifelong friendships and people will always have my back. Certain people will always have my back as long as I have theirs as well. And it's just the whole experience is to say Afghanistan is out of my mind is just like I'd be lying, and I feel that's true for any vet that's been in
Yeah.
Iraq or Afghanistan or even Vietnam. Like it's
Yeah.
something that you always hold with you.